video, but I would just like to say that all the stories that will be played are not my stories, and I am not a professional. Sorry.
Marissa came home from school at around 3 p.m. She walked in the door and told her mom that some random number kept calling her all day. Her mom told her the person may have the wrong number and just to ignore it. Marissa said okay and begins to do her homework. A couple hours later, she receives a phone call from the same number. Marissa answers it this time and says, "Hello?" The man then says, "We finally found you. Don't worry, bunny." Marissa begins to panic and tells her mom what just happened. Her mom's face goes blank and says, "What did the man just call you?" Marissa says, "He called me Bunny." Her mom yells and says, "Grab your stuff, we need to leave." Marissa, confused, packs her things and gets into the red car. Her mom begins driving fast and turns on the radio. The radio says the baby named Marissa, who was kidnapped in the hospital 10 years ago, has been found and police are searching for a red car. Marissa looks at the woman and says, "Who are you?" The woman looks back and says, "You can call me Mom."
This just might be the craziest spring break story you've ever heard. Me and 14 of my friends decided to go to Cabo for spring break when we were in college. We rented an Airbnb and thought everything was going to be so much fun. But on the first night, there was already a couple of my friends that were too tired to go out, so we just decided to split up. Half of my friends stayed at the house and half of us went out to a bar. The bar we ended up going to was right on the water, and as we're sitting there eating our food, a yacht pulls up. And I don't mean like a small yacht, I mean like a huge party yacht. There was little dinghy boats bringing people to and from the yacht. My friend that spoke Spanish went over and started talking to one of the boat taxi drivers. He said that if we wanted to, we could all jump on his boat and he would take us out to the yacht. Since it was spring break, of course I couldn't pass up on this opportunity, so I started running towards his boat to jump on because he was screaming for us to hurry. I was in such a hurry to make sure that I got on that boat, I didn't even look back to see if my friends were behind me. By the time that I realized none of my friends had come with me, I was already halfway to the yacht. Since I was already halfway to the yacht and I didn't speak any Spanish, I just decided to wait it out, get on the yacht, and make some friends when I get there. Luckily, there was plenty of other students there on spring break, so I made plenty of friends. I ended up just staying on the boat all night because the taxi stopped running, but as soon as I could get off in the morning, I went ahead and got off. I called a taxi to drive me back to the Airbnb, but whenever we pulled up to the gates of the neighborhood, there was security and police everywhere. My taxi driver kept driving and dropped me off at the front door, but when we pulled up to the Airbnb, it was literally surrounded by police. That's when I realized that this had to have something to do with me and my friends, and it wasn't just the area we were in. When I saw my friends, I ran up to them and asked them what was going on. It turned out that one of my friends who had stayed at the house ended up falling down the stairs in the middle of the night, breaking the banister and one of the paintings on the wall, and had to be rushed to the ER because he split his head open. The property manager had called the police to make sure that we paid for the damages to the house. The weird part is that they wanted it in cash and said we weren't leaving until we paid. My friend that spoke Spanish was the only one that was able to actually talk to the police. They told her that if we didn't pay for the damages to the house in cash, we weren't leaving the property. We had the money to pay for it, but not in cash because they were wanting over $2,000. We were all freaking out thinking that we were going to be held hostage here in Cabo forever. We all called our parents, who then contacted the U.S. Embassy, and before we knew it, our faces were all over the news with the headlines, 15 American college students held against their will in Cabo. At the moment, there was nothing we could do, so we just decided to go back in the house and sit down and wait. I guess the property manager had also ended up calling a maid service to help clean up the damage done inside the house. Whenever the maids got there, we explained to them what was going on and that we were absolutely terrified. Luckily, they had already seen the news, and so they were willing to help us. They moved all their cleaning supplies into the house and backed their van into the garage. They explained to my friend that if we all got in the van, they would drive us to a nearby hotel where we could stay the rest of the trip. The police were guarding the front door, but we all snuck around them and ended up getting out. We did have to stay in a gross hotel for about a week, though.
Story time of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she even plotted to kill my boyfriend. So at the time, me and this girl, let's just call her Olivia, had only been friends for about 2 years. I mean, we really did everything together. We were with each other 24/7, and I mean, we were pretty good friends. But the only thing about our friendship is she did not like when I had other friends. I mean, she didn't have any other friends herself, but literally she would joke around about strangling my other friends because she didn't like when I gave my attention to anyone else. But honestly, I just thought of it as a joke. And then I started dating this guy, let's just name him Jacob. He was probably the sweetest guy I had ever met, and he was a real simp for me. So we start dating and about 4 or 5 months go by, and he started getting these texts from a random number. And it would always be cringy things like leave her or you die, get away from her, and like stupid cringy threats. Then one night, me and him were just hanging out. Then he gets a text with his exact address saying he had till tonight to leave me, or he wouldn't see another day. Then we hear a knock at the door. I'm running out of time, like for part 2. Part 2 of how my best friend got so weirdly obsessed with me that she plotted to kill my boyfriend. So continuing on with the story, we heard a knock at the door and it ended up being her. And she said, "Oh, I'm just coming by to check on you and make sure you're okay." Mind you, we were at his house. And he looks at me like, what is she doing here? So I asked her to leave, and then she ends up getting so mad at me just because I give us alone time. So the night goes on, and then when I get home, she's in my room. At this time, my whole entire family was out of town, and I was the only one home. So I was like, hey. It was literally just like a normal night, and then I go to shower, and when I get back out of the shower, she's gone. And then my boyfriend calls me, and he goes, "Why is Maddie here?" She had like this black mask on, but she's stupid enough to not realize that we know it's her. And I mean, we're being real here. She was my best friend at the time, so of course he's not going to call the police on her. But she had a knife in her hand, and he opens the door and he like pins her against the wall and then calls 911, I guess. And then to sum it up, when they get there, she tells them everything that she was going to do, and then they put her in a mental hospital. But she said that she was going to murder everybody that gets close to her.
Crazy story time about how I found my aunt and my boyfriend hooking up at a family function. So every year my mom and stepdad would have a Christmas party and everyone from both sides of the family would come. And I also invited my boyfriend. And at this time, my boyfriend and I were both juniors in high school. So everybody came to the party and everything was going good. Well, like an hour into the party, all the adults were super drunk. So before we all opened gifts, I decided to help my mom clean up dinner. So while I'm washing the dishes, I look over and my aunt and boyfriend are talking a lot. And she started to get really touchy with him, but I didn't think anything of it because she was super drunk. So after I'm done cleaning up, we all started opening gifts. And my boyfriend goes up to my room to go get his phone off the charger. And after he went upstairs, my aunt was like, "Oh, I need to go throw up." So about 10 minutes goes past and my boyfriend's still up in the room grabbing his phone, so I went to check on him. And I walk upstairs to see my aunt and my boyfriend laying on my bed making out. Like for part 2. Part 2 to how I caught my aunt and my boyfriend hooking up at a family function. So like I said, they are laying on my bed making out. Doors wide open, they don't even bother to shut the door. And both of their shirts are off. And I think I should just put in here, my aunt is like 28. She's on my stepdad's side. She's really young. So they look up and my aunt's just like drunk as fuck looking at me. And she's like, "Do you want to join?"
Sorry.
Like, bitch, what the fuck? So I'm just like shook. And I start screaming. Everybody rushes up the stairs. And my mom pushes me out of the way and sees my boyfriend and my aunt laying on my bed with their shirts off. So my mom starts screaming at everybody. So my mom calls the cops, says that an adult is touching an underage boy, and she calls his mom, tells her what happened. So my boyfriend and I broke up, so that spread around the whole school, and word got out that they actually started seeing each other.
Story time about how my mom threw hot boiling water at my dad. Okay, so boom. My parents been together for 15 years at this point, and I was only 14. My parents were only dating for a couple of months, and then my mom got pregnant with me. So they ended up getting married soon after. The only problem with that is my mom never really got to know my real dad. He had anger issues, and I'm talking real anger issues. And he refused to go to therapy. Well, I'm sure you guys guessed it. My dad was putting his hands on my mom, and I mean beating her for dumb reasons. And every time I tried to stop it, my dad would literally turn around and beat me too. You would think he would stop for his daughter, but because he would beat me so bad, my mom always told me to stay out of it. Well, one day my mom was cooking and she was boiling some water. My dad came home and seen that she was cooking and got angry. He said that his food should be ready before he gets home. My mom just stayed quiet and he went to go hit her. But this day, my mom was tired of it. So, something changed. Like for part 2. Part 2 on how my mom threw hot boiling water at my dad. So like I said, once my dad got home, he was super angry. He told my mom that his food should have been ready already, even though my mom was literally cooking it. So he went to beat her, but my mom was sick of it. But as he went to hit her, my mom just took the boiling water and threw it at his face. My dad screamed, ran upstairs, and went into the bathroom. My mom took me, took the keys, ran to the car, and we drove to her sister's house. My mom was hysterical. No one in our family knew what was going on in our household, so we had to explain everything to everyone. We called the cops on my dad, and now he's in jail. But I did ask my mom what changed this time. She said she couldn't stand there anymore, but not because of her, but because because of me. She didn't want me to grow up thinking this was okay and that this how men treat their women. And she definitely didn't want him to lay one more finger on me ever again. So she had to build up the courage for herself and for me both. And I will always be super proud of my
Story time. My best friend slashed my tires. But before I get into the story time, I just want to let you guys know that my website is now officially open and the link is right in bio. So as you all know, I used to take clients, and during this time I was blowing up on social media. So I had this celebrity reach out to me and they wanted their nails done, and I'm like, of course. So I had to travel to them. And of course, the first person I had to tell was my best friend. I told her all the details, where I was going, what time I was leaving, how far the distance was. And I thought she would be more happy for me, but her response was like, oh, that's cool, I guess. But I didn't really think much of it. So the morning of, I had to get up early to drive out there because it was a 2-hour drive. And then I noticed all my tires are slashed. And I checked the cameras and it was her. But that's okay because I got her dad to drive me.
One time I was behind the register at Victoria's Secret. This customer walks in and immediately everybody spots her as a red flag. She's just picking up items, throwing them in her bag, not looking at sizes, not looking at colors. So everybody's like, everyone's on their walkie like.
Sorry,
Watch this customer. She's coming to the fitting room. She's headed to the cash wrap. Somebody get her. Check her ID. Get her. Get her. She has a bag full of stuff. And guess who gets her at the register? Me. So she comes to my register and she dumps out her stuff, and we're having a regular conversation. Hi, how are you? Yada, yada, yada. Her total comes up to probably between $700 to $900. It was expensive. My manager is at the register next to me, talking to me on the walkie. Ashley, make sure you get that ID. Don't matter what she's using, make sure you get that ID. So I ask her for the ID because she's paying credit. Why do you need to ask for my ID? Just take it, run it. I'm like, no, ma'am, I'm sorry. I need your ID for the purchase. She starts to raise her voice at me. So she's raising her voice at me, and I'm like, but I couldn't. I just couldn't, y'all. So I was like, I can raise my voice too. Do you want to play this game? Because I'll win, promise. And she's like, oh, well, what time do you get off work? And I'm like, I'm closing. I'm actually getting off at 11. Would you like to pick me up? And then she calls me stupid. She's like, you're fucking stupid. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna eat that. Then she calls me a dumb bitch. Whew. So I took a deep breath. And I said, fuck you, you dumbass bitch. Your broke ass can't even afford these motherfucking clothes, and you over here trying to scam me. Fuck off my line. And honestly, me and her just started going back and forth at each other like, My manager's like, go to the back, go to the back, go to the back. I'm still cursing her out as I'm walking to the back of the store. I really thought I would get fired, but I actually didn't.
Story time about how I found out my sugar daddy was stalking me. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I signed up to a sugar daddy website last year. I lost my job because of COVID. Just started my own small business and things were not going well. I also helped my parents out with money because I didn't want them to be working during COVID. I signed up to a website and instantly I started getting messages. One man stood out because he was very active and owned several businesses. I told him I didn't want to meet up because I just wasn't going to do that, but also because of COVID. He agreed to have a phone conversation with me, and then eventually he offered me $5,000 a month. This was more than enough to help me and my parents out. After that, I was basically his online companion. He would text me and I would text back. We went out to dinner a few times, but because of COVID, we kept our distance. It was truly the perfect scenario for me. Then I noticed that he started to get really clingy. If I didn't text him back right away, he would get upset. One day I got another message from the sugar daddy website. Another man was asking me to go out to dinner twice a week, and he wanted to pay me $1,000 for this. So I said, of course. When I told sugar daddy number 1 that I'd be busy 2 days out of the week, he got really mad and asked me where I lived. I told him
Well, okay, wait, y'all.
I couldn't tell him. Part 2 is up. That's when my sugar daddy asked me where I lived. I was not about to tell him where I lived. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. I told him I couldn't tell him, and he got really upset and offered me $2,000 more, which means that he would be paying me $7,000 a month. Then he said that he didn't want me to be with any other sugar daddies. At this point, I hadn't even told him that I was approached by another sugar daddy. So how did he know that I was talking to another one? I accepted his offer of $7,000 a month, but this only made him even worse. He would call me all the time and ask me where I was, and he would constantly ask me where I lived. He noticed a change in me, and that's when he offered to buy me a car, a Mercedes to be exact. I didn't know if I should accept or not because I knew it would make him feel like he had more ownership over me. I told him that I wasn't sure if I should accept the car because of his behavior. Then he said that he would buy me my own apartment. I felt really creeped out, so I decided not to answer his phones or his messages the rest of the night. 2 hours later, I'm laying in bed and I hear a really hard knock at my door. It was him. Part 3, my sugar daddy starts banging on my front door. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. It was sent to me on Instagram. And he didn't know where I lived. I looked through the peephole and I tell him to leave. That's when he shows me a wad of cash. He tells me I can keep it with no strings attached. I said no, and that's when he started calling me names. He started yelling really loud. I was hoping my neighbors would hear and call the cops. In order to calm him down, I opened the door and I let him in. Big mistake. He asked to use my bathroom, and that's when I grabbed his phone. I saw on his camera roll that he had pictures and video of me. He'd been following me around for months. Started calling the cops, but that's when he came out of the bathroom. Asked if he could stay over, and I said yes. I was so scared. We're supposed to have dinner tonight. The cops said they can't help because he hasn't hurt. Story time about how I got catfished by my best friend. Disclaimer, this is not my story time. My now ex-best friend and I hung out.
Okay, so that's gonna be the end of this video. So if y'all like the story times, I am so sorry I did not notice they had the bad words in them. So yeah. Peace out, bro. Shotgun.